Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. It's time for life updates. We're talking about a move, a wedding, graduation, and more. Join us as we celebrate the good things that are happening and touch on how to manage the expectations and disappointments that come into all of our lives. Let's get started. Hey listeners, today we're going to catch you up on some things that have been going on in our lives. We don't really have just one topic, but we know that we've had a lot going on, and I think everybody this end of school year, coming into summer, there's just a lot of life that goes on. So we thought that we would do a little update from each of us, talk about some things that have been on our minds, and we hope that you'll enjoy just hearing from us, just like as if you were joining us for coffee. Mindy, Julie, I'm excited about this because we've been so busy that the three of us haven't even really chatted.
I know. May is always a crazy month, but I know that you girls have a lot going on this month. So
yes,
it's unusually busy.
Right.
Yes, that made it very clear, like even trying to find a time to podcast, we all mentioned all the things going on in our lives. And I'm like, well, maybe this is what we need to talk about.
Yes. And listeners, we're going to start out with Mindy because you can probably hear that she sounds a little different today. She's totally packed up and ready to move to a new place, and she's on her phone and her AirPods. So her mic sounds a little bit different, but bear with us. But for new listeners, if you have not been listening to Midlife Matters very long, I'm just going to catch you up just a second. So we have three of us. We have three hosts, and Mindy used to live in Nashville. That's how we all know each other. Then she moved to Knoxville, lived there for 5 years. We still kept up. Then when we started the podcast, she had just moved to Pennsylvania. Now, earlier this year, she moved back to Knoxville, and now she is about ready to make another big move, and she is going to share with us what is going on with that, Mindy.
Oh my goodness. I'm not sure where to start or what order to put things in because we have been celebrating that my husband got a job in Georgia. Also, our oldest child is a girl. We have 4, and our oldest got engaged. And so she's also getting married. And so all of this is happening simultaneously. And so basically this week, I am podcasting in my good friend Charlotte's house, who is hosting us in our transition. Our daughter gets married on Sunday. We move down to Georgia on Monday. And in the midst, I have the son turning 19 tomorrow. My boys are finishing school. We're moving and kind of grieving the friends we're leaving, and excited to actually live with my husband again, who has been traveling back and forth for the last 12 weeks. So,
oh my goodness.
Wow.
Where to start?
Has it been 12 weeks already, Mindy? Time goes fast for everybody but the person that's living it.
Oh, I cannot believe it's been 12 weeks.
It's so ironic because it was, you know how things happen. It's so slow during certain times. And now this morning I'm brushing my teeth thinking, are we really at the end?
Mm-hmm.
I'm so thankful it's finally here. We're celebrating so much. There's also some sorrow and grief involved, with the leaving behind of things. But oh my goodness, everything's happening right now.
Yes. And how are you feeling about the wedding? Because, two big life events. Moving can stir up a lot of emotions. And then a child, especially your first one, getting married stirs up a lot of emotions. So what are you like emotion-wise this week?
Oh, I'm extremely confused, Marie. It's like my emotions can't really catch up. And so ironically, we're planning the last minute things. My husband, we purchased a house in Georgia. We're talking about, and he's preparing our home for us this week, having it painted and new water heater and all of that is happening. And then I'm standing in church on Sunday morning, like so praiseful, so thankful. And it's our last Sunday. And so then our sweet Sunday school teacher brings Bryce and I up to pray over us. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't prepared for this emotion. Like I have to actually say goodbye in the middle of all this. And then I'm talking to friends and we're talking about the wedding and then we're talking about the move and I get into church and I don't know what happens at the very end of the service, but I'm sitting with my good friend Stephanie, who lost her husband. And I think, oh, I have to leave her. We've been sitting together. I've been her church pew mate, since Brian passed away, and I have to leave her, and I'm not okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm sitting next to my husband and my 3 sons are there, and I look down and I start crying because I just realized I'm leaving Grant behind. And I'm like, I forgot about that. Like, so I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
I'm high, I'm low, like things hit me out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, I haven't dealt with that emotion yet. I didn't realize this was also happening.
Wow, that's a lot, Mindy. And, just a wedding is enough to bring on all of those emotions, but you have a lot else going on in addition to the wedding. So I'm just glad you're here today.
Oh, I'm so thankful. And this week, I finally feel at peace. Cleaning out our rental house last week, kind of every time we mark something off the list, I get a little more excited. And so I have a peace this week, and I just, there's more joy and there's more peace than there have been. There's been a lot of planning, anxious thoughts, sleepless nights that kind of go along with all these changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And your celebration probably starts, what are you doing? Like the rehearsal dinner Saturday night? Like, is this going to be? Yes. Okay.
Yes. So basically the boys' last day of school is Friday here. The drive to Chattanooga Saturday, rehearsal dinner Saturday night, wedding Sunday, drive to my new house and move in on Monday. And then Bryce and I, our anniversary is Wednesday, the 26th. So
wow.
we have joked that for our anniversary, we get to live together.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. Well, that is a whirlwind of busyness and emotions and a lot of celebrations, but also, we can't forget that it is always hard to say goodbye to people that you love.
Absolutely. That is where I'm at. My journal is full and the Lord is hearing it all.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I have some sentimental things going on too. My third child, my middle child of 5, he's a boy and he is graduating, and I have joked all spring, like, no big deal. He doesn't even care. He doesn't even want to walk. Like, he's said several times, like, do I even need to go? He's not a celebratory type of guy. And I just thought, no big deal. I've already had a girl and a boy graduate. I already know. But it has hit me hard this week. Some friends and I got together and we planned a graduation party for our 3 boys who are all very similar, introverted. They weren't the type that were like, please throw me a graduation party, but we felt really happy that they felt special. They felt celebrated. And the moms felt like, yay, we did it. So it was really good. That was meaningful and special. And then on Sunday morning, we had Senior Sunday at our church that Isaac has grown up in, and that was special to see him up there. And then after church, he all of a sudden said, I think I'll go to baccalaureate today. He hadn't been planning on going. So I was like, okay, well, we'll go to baccalaureate. And then that was very sentimental. The speaker, they talk about how everything this week is about you, the graduate. Like, you're the star of your family. Like, every planning and every errand that your mother is doing is all about, like, graduation party, getting things ready for you. And every conversation with people are, where are you going? And what are you doing? And what are your plans? And that's true. Like, you really are the star. And so it just kind of hit me, wow, like, this is real. And he's done. He's done now with school. He doesn't have to take his exams because he had a certain grade in every class. And so he's just home this week and he'll be going off to college. And it's hard to believe in just a few short months that he won't be here, for conversations and just to see him. He's going to be going 5 hours away, which is farther than any of my other kids. So that's a new thing. And so I don't know. I mean, all that to say, I guess you think you have it down. You have and you're like, oh, well, it won't bother me that much because I know they do come home. But it still really bothers you. You're excited and you're proud, but you're also sad that an era is ending.
Yeah. Well, and it's easy to think about lumping our kids together like, oh, we've been through this, we know what to expect. But for them, it is their unique experience. It is a first time thing for them. And that makes it kind of new. You realize that makes it new for you too. And
well, and those feelings, like, they surprise you. I know, like, I have been surprised by some of my feelings. And it sounds like with Isaac, especially like you go into it not expecting to have certain feelings and it hits you out of nowhere and you're like, I'm a mess.
Yes. And I think any of these kinds of milestones, and maybe you're noticing that this week, Mindy, hit you hard too, because it's really a marker in your own life. And, people start posting, here was so-and-so on their first day of kindergarten, and here's so-and-so on their last day of school. And it's so easy to start thinking about your child at all their different ages and like, how did all that time pass? And I'm sure you've thought about that with Abby too. Like, oh my goodness, just yesterday I took her to the park and today I'm getting ready for her wedding. Like, it's very surreal. Any of these kinds of things bring all that up.
Well, and you look at how you looked on the first day of kindergarten and how like you've aged. Not that we don't all look wonderful, but I meant, I'm just saying that it reminds you that you didn't stay the same either. You're getting older.
I know.
Stop it.
We don't look older, but we are old.
Well, okay. So that might explain one of my crazy purchases that I made yesterday on a whim. I was at Target. And all of a sudden, I was just like, you know what? I walk by these crazy overalls. They're like wide leg and they're ripped up in the front and they're light colored. I'm like, I got to have those. And I feel like I'm like reverting back to teenage self, And so I'm wearing them right now and I'm totally loving these things.
They look cute. Yes. Well, I've seen pictures of when you post for like Abby's birthday of you wearing overalls. And I think she's wearing overalls and she's like a baby. So... Do you remember that? You've posted those before.
Oh, I remember. We were matching. Yes. So, Marie, does Isaac handle your feelings okay? Like, have you voiced that to Isaac? And is he just like, oh, Mom, like it's fine? Or does he actually sit in those feelings with you at all?
He listens. Like last night he was in the couch and I came over and sat next to him like, oh, just a few more months, Isaac, I can't sit next to you. And he's like, I know. And I think he feels sad to leave home too. I mean, obviously it's exciting to go to college and stuff, but I think he recognizes, he's seen his siblings go. So he recognizes that once you leave, it's never really the same. Like maybe that first one can tell themselves it'll be just the same when I come home. But I think the later siblings, they know how things change. And they recognize that even that they've already experienced a hole when somebody left. So they can imagine how there'll be a hole when they leave. Whereas the oldest, I don't think they really even think that much about it.
No, they don't understand that at all.
Yeah. Like there will be a hole at the dinner table and, around the house and just in the conversations and we'll miss him. And I think he'll miss us too. Yeah. So anyways, just a lot of thoughts and feelings. And then it's always very busy when you have someone graduating too. Like there's just a lot of things to get ready. And if you're throwing a party, that's busy. And if you're going to the ceremony and if you're having family come in and there's just a lot of balls to keep spinning in the air. I guess it's good because it keeps you busy. You can't just sit in your feelings. And so this weekend will be the big graduation. And I always feel like once we get past the ceremony, then you can start to like maybe embrace, the next stage. But when you're just like you probably feel with the wedding, Mindy, it's like, well, she's not quite married, so she's still mine. But now on Sunday, she won't be. Like, it's just a hard...
Yeah, it's not weird. Quite time to move on yet. You've got to get through this first. Yeah.
I really do find myself saying, we need to end well. I want all of us to end well in all the things that we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then another emotion I feel like I've been dealing with, and listeners may relate to this, COVID restrictions, well, especially in Tennessee, are pretty much gone this week. And yay, I mean, I am excited and happy about that. Like, that is definitely cause for celebration. But I personally have also felt like, I don't know, and I don't want to minimize true, like, PTSD, but I sort of feel like we've kind of been fighting like a long slogging war for a year, and it feels too abrupt to just be like fighting the war and then the next day like oh, it's over, move on. I feel like there's a lot of emotions or things that, to deal with this year, whether you were loving the lockdown or not, or no matter where you were, all the changes and all the things that happened. And I think especially this came up for me at baccalaureate because the speaker was talking about how COVID was this senior's class kind of 9/11. Like when she was graduating, it was 9/11, and that kind of changed their senior class. And obviously COVID, she said, was a whole year of change for these kids. And, school has been not the best this year. And there have been a lot of things that have hurt a lot of kids that were not the best thing for a lot of kids. There were kids that never even entered the classroom. Like, I feel like as a society, especially for kids in school this year, I feel like it deserves maybe like a moment of silence or something. Like, I feel like we're ignoring a lot of things that impacted a lot of families, or, all the businesses that closed, or, the people that there were relationships that were fractured over this. There were family members that haven't seen each other. Like, there were people that died alone and isolated. Like, there was just so much as a society, and I feel like it's too abrupt to just say, yay! And what do we do with all that? I don't know if you guys struggled with that at all.
Yeah, it definitely has taken its toll. And, just this morning I was reading something by this woman that I follow pretty regularly on Instagram, and she referenced this article in the New York Times. So I searched the article and read the whole article myself, and it was so relevant to what you just said, Marie. It was talking about how we've all grieved for a year. Like, some people grieved the loss of life. Some people grieved the loss of their income. Some both of those things. But we've all kind of grieved a loss of normalcy in life. And I think that's kind of putting it mildly. But the psychologist that was writing the article gave kind of a name to that, and she called it languishing. She said, it's kind of a sense of stagnation. It's a feeling like you're just muddling through your day, looking at life through kind of a foggy windshield. Like, it's not that we're depressed, we're not hopeless, but we're not like fully thriving either. We're in between. It's more like a dulled sense of what life should be like. And I thought that is really true. And I think it kind of helps to name things, like put a name to it. And to know that that's a shared feeling, like we're all feeling that in some form. And she said, when people ask, how are you doing? Instead of saying, oh, fine, maybe we could say, honestly, I'm languishing.
That's a great word.
Yeah, I thought that was a really fitting word. And that you don't just go right. Like, I'm so glad that church is meeting next week without mask, and it's we're all vaccinated and we're moving on, but it isn't just jumping right back into it emotionally either.
Right.
There's kind of this transition period of testing the waters, and
it is odd because I feel like there's been so much fear for so long, and we didn't really know what to be afraid of. There's like the rules kept changing, and you weren't sure where the enemy was at. The enemy being whatever foreign thing you were afraid of or fighting against. And it's just, again, it's a confusing place to be. I like that word, Julie, languishing. It's ironic. I was just talking with a friend, my friend Katie up in Pennsylvania, my good friend. And she said, Mindy, like, we've been at home for a year. And she said, like, my boys are just now going back to school just for a couple of weeks, now that we're vaccinated and all of that. And she said, I'm going to rejoin the Y. And she said, and I'm just realizing that you moved. She said, I didn't have to deal with those feelings. She said, it's very confusing because I know you moved almost a year ago, but I'm going to the gym and you're not going to be there. And I'm just now realizing it. So it's a very odd existence.
Yeah.
Gets me thinking about history. Like, how did people move on from any big conflicts? Like, think of how long World War II went on. I mean, how did you just, when it ended, did they just wake up the next day and everything's back to normal? No. Like, there's a transition period, but we don't really know what that looks like because I don't think that we've ever really dealt with anything like this. Even when we have fought wars in our lifetime, they've been on other people's soil.
But there were still after effects. There were still losses,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's definitely losses, but I don't think it was felt as prevalently everywhere in society.
Right.
I mean, I'm really taking a look back at history and thinking, wow, I never gave those other things enough thought, and I never thought about those enough.
Yeah, how you build things back up to where you were, and it takes time.
Yeah.
Like some things I'm so thankful. I felt like we were spinning out of control. I mean, in the workforce, you were always available by phone, by text, by whatever technology. And it's like things were spinning faster and faster and faster. And so some areas of our culture, I'm thankful, had a reset. Like you can't keep getting better and better and better. At some point, like you're going to just spin out of control and not have anything left. But even to create boundaries, seeing that we need more space in our schedule, it helped us slow down in a sense. So there's some things I feel like the reset button was majorly hit and we came to a halt. And now it's like, let's maybe have some wisdom about adding things back in at its proper time and place.
Yeah. So listeners, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I've had some mixed feelings this week, like I am really happy about it. Yes. But there's also, I'm just not, I guess maybe my emotions don't just turn on a dime. I'm not, like you can't just turn off all the feelings you had before and be like, forget about those. And I don't think that's good for us as a society. I feel like we need to analyze what happened and admit things that were done wrong. And maybe we shouldn't do that again, or admit places that if anything like this happens again, this is not how we should handle it. And maybe congratulate ourselves on good jobs. But like we need to be able to look at it honestly with honest eyes and not just shove it all under the carpet and say, okay, back to normal, because that leaves people feeling really whiplashed.
There's no way our emotions can catch up with that.
Yeah, you want to feel like the bad parts were redeemed somehow. Every good story needs some redemption, and you want to feel like your losses were somehow not in vain,
Right. So I don't know, listeners, if you're feeling this way, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to email us, if you've had any of these thoughts too, at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. But that's kind of where I am. I guess I'm just having like an emotional week. Mindy and I are all over the place.
That's right.
And Julie, I know that your emotions are up in the air too. Like, I don't know what we're going to title this episode. Wild emotions, I guess.
Yeah. Roller coaster ride?
Yes, roller coaster ride. Julie, let us and listeners know what has been going on with you.
Well, I'll start with a positive.
Okay, great.
Or an upbeat. If you happen to listen to our episode with Laura Tremaine, I can't remember the number, but it was recently.
A few episodes ago, yeah.
Yeah. I mentioned that I wanted to have a bonfire night with some of my neighbors who are pretty new to the neighborhood. And it was a really beautiful, cool night. And 5 of us came, and everyone just brought an appetizer, and we just sat and talked. And I know I'd asked Laura, like, oh, how do I ask good probing questions? How do I get to know my neighbors? I was kind of worried about how the conversation would go and how I would carry it and all that. And it was just really funny because there was not one moment of silence.
Oh, really? That's so funny.
Yes, it was a super easy group for sure. And one of our newest neighbors has young kids, and she didn't think she was going to be able to make it because her husband was out of town. And she said, I am not missing out. I'm getting a babysitter. So she got a babysitter at the last minute.
Great.
And I was so glad because she was really, really funny and upbeat and kind of really made the whole night, so, but I, even though the night was fun and upbeat, I could hear in everybody's voice that 2020 had been really hard. Like my newest neighbor had moved right before the shutdown. I can't imagine moving into a new neighborhood, a new school, and then being cut off from everybody. They all the moms work. So they had kids and remote learning and working at home. And just the isolation and loneliness, all of it. There was this kind of sense of loss kind of hanging over, everybody's stories. But I was really, really glad I did it. I felt good about it. And I think it all caused us to say, hey, how can we keep doing this? Like another lady said, hey, well, my husband loves to cook this and maybe we could share it with have a little block party or whatever. So I think it kind of got the ball rolling.
Oh, that's great, Julie. That's awesome.
Yeah. I love that so much that you opened up your fireplace and invited these women over. This women you don't know. How did you invite them? Like, how did that process go? I want to hear about it.
It was so awkward because I know my next door neighbor pretty well. We've become friends. She's been there a little over a year, and she knows my other neighbors better than I do. So I called Chris and I said, hey, I want to do this. I don't know anybody to invite. You invite who you want.
It was like secondhand invitations.
Yeah. So they all showed up at once. I go out into the backyard and was like, this is so awkward. I don't even know you. And I've invited you to my house.
Oh.
So we just did quick introductions and that was it. I mean, it just kind of took off. So.
And you all needed it. Like, it sounds like you all craved that evening together.
Yeah, I think it was a really weird feeling to be hosting a party, having people. I mean, I've had people in my house in COVID, but this was just like a real get together. And I was a little nervous about it, but it was really worth it. So I'm glad I did it.
That's so great. And it inspires other people. Yeah.
Yes. It is inspiring. I'm really proud of you for stepping out. That is highly uncomfortable to do.
Yeah. I kind of felt like a teenager was like, oh, we're exchanging numbers now. And
is anybody going to come?
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. And what else has been going on, Julie? I know that the next little bit of your update is harder.
Well, like I've said before, I feel like in most ways our life is on hold. For those that maybe are new listeners, my husband, John, got a cancer diagnosis in January, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. And we've just been struggling to kind of find a routine with his treatment. And he just had a lot of complications back in April. He spent 7 nights in the hospital. He had an abscess. He had a really bad infection. He came home on IV antibiotics. And then we were surprised on the day his treatment was supposed to start back. His white blood cell count was 0 out of the blue. We had no idea. And so then he was sent back home to isolate in his room for a week because he could not be around people or pets, which is really hard in our house because we have a small zoo. And I just thought, really? More isolation? Like, this is not what he needs, because he really thrives on personal connection and relationships. And so it's hard to see him in his room for a week. And all in all, he missed 6 weeks of treatment. So in May, we were finally back on a routine, and his routine is 3 weeks on. He gets treatment on Tuesday mornings for 3 weeks, and then he gets a week off. So with missing the 4th Tuesday, he goes like 14 days between treatments. So it's a pretty long time. And he really looks forward to that because that's kind of a time to fully recover from the effects of the chemo. And it's a chance to live life, live it the way he hopes to live it. And he's had some really great days recently. He is eating normally and gaining weight, which is just a huge praise.
Excellent.
He's eating me out of house at home, actually. And I just love it because that was my biggest fear at first, was his weight loss and seeing him not be able to eat. So he's eating regular food, if you count Steak and Shake and number one Chinese as regular food. But this week we had planned a little trip to the mountains, to the Smokies, and we were actually in the car, packed up with a cooler, with our suitcases, on the road, still in Nashville, and he got sick. And he said, Julia, I'm going to have to turn around. I can't do this. I was like, what? What's wrong? And he said, I think I'm going to throw up. And anyway, it turns out I think he's having a reaction, a chemo reaction, a gastrointestinal thing. So we turned around and I was just so upset. I was sad. I was angry. And I just had a big pity party that night because I spent the night unpacking both of our suitcases, undoing the cooler, putting it all away. And the whole time I'm not really sure how to share this with John because I feel like it'll be directed at him. Like, I'm not mad at him. I'm not frustrated with him, but I'm just so upset. And it's like, I don't even know what I'm mad at, And so then my sadness turned quickly to anger because I think we all talked about this. I'd rather be mad than sad.
Yes.
So I was just really struggling to understand, what am I feeling? I'm mad, but what am I mad at? Who am I mad at? Because it wasn't John, but I could see that he was maybe feeling that way. And that's the last thing I want to do, is heap any kind of, sadness or anxiety on him. And I talked with a friend who helped me just see that I think I'm just mad at the loss of control once again, of just having to let something else go. And I'm mad at cancer.
Yes.
And so once I could kind of name it, okay, this is what I'm mad at, it was a little easier to accept. And over the last couple of days, I've kind of started to work through it. But it just got me to thinking about disappointment a lot and how we handled that. And I think, we've all had some disappointments this year with COVID and the things that we've just talked about. And, for me, I just needed something. I felt like I needed something to disconnect my emotions from, something that would disconnect me from my emotions, like in order to give them a rest. Like I can only cry so much. I can only be sad so much. And so for me, that day I went and worked out, and then I went on a hike. And that just really helped. And it's not like it fixes anything, but it just gives me a better frame of mind. And, sometimes it's moving furniture or restyling a bookcase or a corner of a room. And and sometimes I spend a lot of time analyzing the way I think and the things that I do. And I can be really hard on myself. They are just distractions from real life. Like, oh, I'm just not content because I'm always moving things around, or I'm always redoing something, like, is this not being content, or am I in some kind of state of denial? Like, does any of this really matter in the state of my life? Like what my bookcases look like? Like, I kind of feel guilty. Like, my husband has cancer. Why would I care about my bookcases or my coffee table or my centerpiece? But I heard this quote by Jordan Peterson. Have you heard of his book, The 12 Rules for Life? It's hugely popular right now.
Okay.
And what I just really have only heard this one quote, but he says you should make one room in your house as beautiful as possible. So I started thinking on that. And, because that's what I've been doing a lot of. And I think creativity is kind of a way to bring order out of my chaos. Like, ultimate challenge in creativity would be to make something beautiful out of nothing, and I think that's kind of what he means. He doesn't mean like go out. Anybody could go out and hire a decorator or spend thousands of dollars on new stuff, but that's not what he's talking about. And I think that's why I love the challenge of just moving it around, tweaking it, adding this here to there, trying to create some beauty out of chaos. And that all just kind of made sense to me that what I'm doing is not meaningless or silly.
Right.
Right.
No, it's really not. And those creative efforts or outlets essentially give your mind a break. You can focus on something else and move it around. And I know that a change in perspective or scenery can sometimes change your whole mood. The circumstances haven't changed one bit, but even going sometimes out your front door or walking out your back door, and maybe even having the sensation of taking your shoes off and walking barefoot on the grass. There's something about a change of scenery or sensation or creativity that, I don't know, I feel like the Lord can use to give some joy in the midst of such grief and sorrow.
Right.
And I find that I can't have both things chaotic. I can't have my surroundings chaotic and my mind and emotions chaotic. Like,
that's a good point.
And so if I can't get in order, if I'm experiencing disappointment or my emotions or my mind is all muddled up, I have to clean my house. I have to get the rest of my life in order. And it might sound stupid, but I need to put order somewhere. And as I'm doing that, a lot of times my emotions and my thoughts will also start to come into more orderly fashion, but I can't have just everything a mess in my life. We can't live like that.
I remember one time when you said, Marie, like something was out of control in your life, so you painted your stair risers.
Oh,
like I could control this. And I think
that's right.
Yeah, that is so true. It's like, and as a Christian, I'm not advocating like I'm in control of my life. I know I'm not. That mentality, but it's all about surrendering my life. That's where peace and joy come. But by doing those little things that let me have some control, I think it just gets my mind into a place where I can accept.
Yeah.
It also kind of helps you realize how very little you have control over too. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just puts my mind in a better place where I can move forward. On my hike, I hike a lot with a friend who's going through some difficult stuff. And she said, when I'm out here on this trail, I know where to walk. I look forward and I just walk. I take the next step. Like there's no ambiguity. There's no confusion. I know where to walk and I just keep walking. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just have to do that. You have to give your emotions a rest.
Yeah.
And just be able to do the easy thing,
Mm-hmm.
Walking forward.
Bryce and I have this thing that we've talked about over the years, especially with all of our moves, that there are times in your life where when everything feels out of control, you do well the things that you can control. So you make sure that you eat well to fuel your body. You make sure that you have a quiet time. You make sure that you exercise, and you make sure that you sleep well. Hopefully you can sleep well. Mm-hmm. Gets very much like foundational. Okay, I have to make sure that I have time for the word. It's just setting those things in place because those are so that you can deal with life.
Mm-hmm. Well, in addition to kind of controlling our environment, I think one of the things that helps me with disappointments is just being able to say them out loud. And I called Julie with a minor disappointment in the scheme of things, but it felt like a very personal disappointment.
Yeah.
I had been praying about a car for my daughter, and it's so terrible looking for used cars. And we thought we had found a great one. We went to a parking lot at the grocery store to meet this guy. He was just the kind of person you want to buy a car from. Older gentleman, meticulous in caring for the car. The car looked like the day it had rolled off the lot, even though it was 2005. It just was a great situation. And so we were talking to the guy and I said, well, you don't have to convince me. I said, I'll write you a check right now. And he goes, I'm interviewing 4 people today. And I'm going to decide who is the most deserving, and I'll let you know at the end of the day. And I just sort of came home feeling so deflated. One, I felt like kind of personally rejected by this guy, like I wasn't good enough to buy his 16-year-old car. And I felt like God had dangled this perfect car. Like I was sitting in the car, like it was right there. I practically had texted a picture of my daughter to say, look at what we're getting. And then it was like, here's my great car, and then rip it back, and we don't even think you're good enough to buy the car. I don't know. I took it really personally. So I came home and I called Julie and I was like, I know, Julie, that you have bigger things going on, but I just need to tell you about this disappointment. And I said, how do you deal with these things? And she said, she goes, I was so disappointed that John couldn't continue his treatment, as Julie was talking about earlier in the podcast about John having to miss treatment because of being in the hospital. And she said, I was so worried about that. But then as he gained strength by missing it, I saw that was God's provision for him. So sometimes we have to just look at disappointments as maybe God's provision for us. And then she shared something that her son had gone through with like a job and how they had thought that this one job would be the best thing ever. And it really wouldn't have been. But in the moment that you're disappointed, you don't know that. And I've told that to myself several times over the few weeks since we've talked about that. Like, maybe this is God's provision. Like when you are disappointed about something, like trying maybe just to tell a friend and they can encourage you, because sometimes, a friend can just help us out a little bit. at the end of the day, that guy called me and said, I know you've probably been on pins and needles all day long, wondering if you got the car, but I want you to know you were second in line. And I just thought, oh my goodness, like the guy just keeps on kicking people.
First of all, that is the most bizarre car selling story I think I've ever heard.
I know. And then he goes, but this deal might not go through. So maybe you'll get it after all. I'm like, why would you go with a deal that's not going to go through? Like, it was so bizarre. But I was so glad I had talked to Julie earlier in the day, because after I hung up with the guy, then I was really wondering what is going on with this situation. But I mean,
a little too much time on his hands.
Fast forward a few weeks later, we did buy a car a few days ago for my daughter, and it did work out. Is it the situation that I felt the most secure in, where it was this guy that had every service record and it seemed like the perfect situation? No, but I have to keep on remembering that my security does not lie in like that surface thing. That's not the car that God gave me. God chose this other car, and just because I don't know every second about the history and it didn't only have one owner and all the things people say will make it a great car doesn't mean that he can't work out a great situation, but I think it's sometimes so easy for us to just want like the security that we can see and not trust that God knows that something's better.
And also on the other end of that is you don't also have to hear, oh, that car blew up yesterday. So that, you know what I mean? Like you may never know why.
Right.
We don't usually get the answer why necessarily, we don't ever see it played out in the way we want. We just have to trust.
It seems like the older I get, the more I realize the beauty of not being in control. There are so many things that I was talking to my adult children this morning. We were having breakfast and I said, there's always that one thing that pushes you over that you feel like, okay, I could handle it up to this point and now I can't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even for me in this season, it always seems the Lord allows that one thing that pushes you over the edge. For me, it was the mouse in my van that I joked about a couple months ago. And it was the one thing that pushed me over the edge, and that it made me realize I couldn't control it. And I really had been trying to handle everything in my own strength, and I couldn't possibly do it. And it brings you to that point of surrender that Julie talked about. And I was talking to my son about this. He's actually been in training and is about to have a tryout with UT football team. And we were talking about he's literally beating his body into submission. He is a specimen right now, honestly. He turns 19 tomorrow. It's just amazing what the Lord has done in his life. But on his home screen, from the conversations we've had, he made his home screen a white flag because he can't control his future. And this is his shot. He'll see if the Lord will open this door or not. And he is at that place at 19 trying to find a place of surrender and peace in the unknown of what his future will be, which way he'll go. And I love that picture of the white flag and the fact that he put it on his home screen. I'm like, okay, that's wisdom. I need to do that.
Yeah, I saw on Facebook he posted today, Lord, I surrender blank.
Yes.
And we each have something that we need to surrender. And a lot of times what someone needs to surrender over here, you're like, oh, I could surrender that in a second. Like you have your own thing that drives you to the edge, Mindy.
And that's why God isn't asking you to surrender that, because you probably could. Like that means, you know what I mean? You're not holding on to that. You're not grasping at that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about how we deal or move forward with disappointment. We're all going to have it. And it's almost like, even though we hate to think about it, you kind of have to plan for it, or you kind of have to admit that you're going to have disappointments. Like, I don't know why. Every disappointment I ever have, it's like I treat it like it's the last one I'm ever going to have. And I'm so flabbergasted by it. And like, how am I ever going to get through this situation? But I'm going to have another disappointment probably within 24 hours of that one. So do you guys have any wisdom on that?
We're always surprised. Like, why is this happening?
I know. I always think, haven't I had enough yet?
Right.
It's my tendency, after I've experienced some big disappointment to just say, you know what, I'm not going to have any more expectations because then I can't get hurt. Then I can't be disappointed. And I was talking with John about that specifically over this trip. And he was like, I am not going to live my life that way. Like, and deep down, I don't either. I don't, because that's giving up.
Right.
You know, if I took away planning from him, like, John, we're not going to be able to go anywhere because your schedule, you know, your body, it's too unpredictable. I have to plan more loosely. Like, instead of saying, you know what, that just won't work, so we shouldn't plan, maybe my expectations or my plan should be broader, less specific. Like, what's my ultimate goal? To spend time with John, quality time, make memories, be together. Okay, so less focus on we were supposed to go to the mountains in Gallenberg on Monday or Sunday, you know, and let just whatever could come out of that come out. And so I think you have to look at, okay, what's the desire that was thwarted there that's making me so disappointed, and try to live according to that desire, not just so focused on that outcome. Like, I just can't tie all my expectations to some goal that I can't control. Easier said than done, but that's kind of where I've come in my line of thinking about this. And I don't know. I think for me, I always initially feel like the victim of some cosmic unfairness.
I always think, what did I do wrong? Why am I being punished? You know,
why me? Why does it have to keep happening? You know, and then I just can't stay there. I've got to get out of that. So then that's how I've been working through it. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All that to say, because his next week off is in June. Like, each month he'll have a week off where we can supposedly, you know, go and do something. So we have planned a trip to Colorado with all our kids. And to be honest, I'm just really, really afraid of what could happen to those plans, because it's not even like we would know a week before. Like, we could be driving to the airport, you know? And that just scares me and makes me want to not plan.
Right.
Like, oh, it'd just be easier if we didn't go. But
easier if you didn't have your hopes up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, but John's like, no way. He goes, we're going to keep it on the books. Just do what we can do. And if we can't, we'll deal with that then. So.
That's actually really wise what you just said. And that's something I'm coming closer and closer to as life happens. You can't always plan or decide right now. There are so many decisions that you're like, well, we don't have all the information. Let's wait to talk about that at its time. Because so many things keep happening in our lives where we're like, well, we just can't talk about that right now. Like, we can't make that decision right now. And so again, like, planning for the future, it's like, who knows? I mean, we have no idea what the future holds, but holding loosely, but still planning, because if you're protecting yourself from being disappointed, you're also protecting yourself from being happy and joyful. And I feel like that goes together. And
you're taking away hope if you don't plan. So planning, but holding them loosely.
Right.
And tell someone about your disappointment or about your fear of disappointment, because now we know how to pray for you, Julie. And you know that you're not alone in hoping for it to go well, rooting for it to go well, and you won't be alone if it doesn't go well. You know, people will be able to support you. Like, telling someone about your disappointments can be a great support to you.
Yeah, and it is. And I really appreciate you both and all my friends that I can talk to and who are praying so much for us, getting us through.
Yeah. Well, we definitely want to be a support. I know that listeners, even just hearing you, we've gotten such an outcry from listeners saying they're praying for John and Julie. How can they help John and Julie? So, you know, we thank you, listeners, for supporting them, even just with your comments and sending words of love. Like, those are encouraging, definitely.
Yes, so much. Thank you.
So, listeners, that's what's going on in our worlds this week. And I'm sure that all of you have things going on as you end the school year, get ready for summer, things open back up in your area, life changes. Maybe you go back to work and you've been working at home. Like there's so many different things and changes that people are going through. And we hope that you enjoyed just listening to all the changes that are happening for other people. Like you're not alone in any kind of feelings, whether you're happy or sad or disappointed or wondering. We've talked about them all here today, ladies.
Yep.
We're pleasantly confused in midlife right now.
Yes.
We're all struggling together.
Mm-hmm. This week, I am hoping to be able to go to Mindy's daughter's wedding because on Saturday, my son graduates outside. And one of the 2 rain dates is Sunday afternoon. But as I look at the weather, Saturday looks really good. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to post pictures of graduation on our Instagram and also of Abby's wedding. We won't reveal too much, but I'll at least get a picture of Mindy and I together to show you guys.
That's right.
But yes, we are excited to celebrate with you in that, Mindy.
And I'll be there in spirit, Mindy.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thank you both so much. I appreciate you guys. We can celebrate together and we can pray for one another along the way.
All right, ladies. I look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds great. I'll be coming at you from Georgia.
All right.
A lot will have changed by next week.
Yes. All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, girls.
We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.